Hey y'all, today's lesson is multiplying and dividing decimals. Again, you learned most of this in 6th grade. The only new part that I'm going to add are the negative signs. You'll want to copy this chart down into your spirals, but first let's talk about the rules of multiplying. You ignore the decimals, like you just pretend the decimals aren't even there. You multiply normally, and then you're going to place the decimal back in your answer by counting over the number of decimal places that you had in your problem. So you're going to count the number of decimal places and then put it in your answer. When you divide, it's a little trickier. When you divide, you have a dividend and a divisor. The divisor is the one that you're dividing by. It's the one that goes on the outside. That number has to be a whole number. Your divisor must be a whole number. If it's not a whole number, you're going to move the decimal over, and then whatever you do to the outside, you also have to do to the inside. And that's just a little reminder. You move the decimal on the outside and the inside, and then you bring your decimal up. So wherever it is down here, you bring it up to the top of your little house. And then just a reminder, same signs are positive, different signs are negative. All right, so examples for multiplication. 3.24 times negative 0.56. I see that these are different signs, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And then I'm multiplying, I'm ignoring the decimal, so I'm just multiplying like normal. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19. 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. You add these up, and we get 4, 4, 11, 7, 8, and 1. To find out how many decimal places we need to move over, we count how many decimal places in our problem. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I know my answer is going to be negative. So my final answer is negative 1.8144. So that was an example of one multiplying. Let me show you another example. We have a negative times a negative. So I see my same signs are positive. Negative 1.05 times 0.004. I'm going to ignore my decimals. And then when you drop this decimal, you can ignore these two zeros. You can't ignore this 0 because it's between two numbers, but you can ignore these two zeros. So now let's multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 4 times 1 is 4. I'm going to count the number of decimals I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to move it over. 1, 2, 3. Any suggestions? What do you do when you run out? Exactly, you put zeros. 4, 5. And I know that my answer is positive. So my answer is 0.0042. And do we really need to write that in 0? No. So 0042 is my answer. So these are multiplication examples. So let me show you some division examples. All right, so we're going to divide. This is the problem that we started with in the front. 63 divided by negative 5.25. I know my answer is going to be negative, and I put my divisor on the end. I have to move it over twice, so that means I move it over here twice, and then I bring it up. You have to have a whole number out here. Once you move the decimal over, we can begin to divide. I see that 525 goes into 630 one time. And that is 525. And when we subtract, 10 minus 5 is 5, 2 minus 2 is 0, 6 minus 5 is 1. We're left with 105. Does 525 go into 105? No. I bring down my 0. And now I'll look at this. How many times will 525 go into 1050? And I know after doing the math that it should be 2 times. 2 times 525 is going to be 1050. I do not have a remainder, so I don't need to add any more zeros, and I see that my answer is 12, but I know that it's negative because I have different signs. So negative 12, just a whole number, negative 12. Number 4, negative 2.48 divided by 0.16. Again, I see that my signs are different. My signs are different, so my answer is going to be negative. I put 0.16 on the outside. I have to move it over twice. So I move this one over twice and put it up. I look at this and I see, okay, 16 into 24. We'll go one time. 1 times 16 is 16. And I'm left with 8. Bring down 88. 16 into 88. I'm not really sure how many times 16 will go into 88, so I'm going to try, I'll try 5. 6 times 5 is 30. 5, 80. So that's pretty close. So I'm going to do 5, and that's 80. I subtract and I'm left with 8. Well, what happens when you don't have anything left to bring down? You add a 0. So I'm going to add a 0. 16 into 80. Well, we know that it's going to be 5. And I don't have a remainder. But I know that my answer is going to be negative 15.5. Negative 15.5. And I had to add a 0 to continue on with my problem. We don't do remainders anymore. I know you learned that last year. You don't do remainders. You're going to add a 0 and keep going. So here are you try examples. I've given you 2 problems to do. I want you to copy them down. I want you to try. The first one is a multiplication problem, and then the second one is a division problem. So remember, you ignore the decimals over here, multiply. Over here, you have to move the decimal over and then divide. So pause the video, work these out, and then when you're ready to see the answer, press play. All right, this time I already worked them out for you. So I want to show you. Here's what I did. Number 5, I ignored the decimal. I multiplied, so check your line. 8024, 60180. And then when I added them up, I got 68204. So then I need to put a decimal point back in. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to move over 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. And these are both the same sign, so my answer is positive. So 6.8204. I'll be interested to see if you got that one right tomorrow. Now let's look at the division one. The signs are different, so my answer is going to be negative. I moved one place on the outside, so I moved one place on the inside. And then here are the numbers that I multiplied. So I did 8 times 3 is 24, subtracted. I got 9, got 1 and brought down my 1. And then I said 3 times 3 is 9, subtracted, brought down my 4. 8 times 3 is 24, brought down my 3. And then 1 times 3 is 3, 0 remainder. The only thing left is I need to put my negative sign in. So negative 838.1. Negative 838.1. So I know this was a lot of multiplying and dividing, and we're going to practice more in class. So make sure you write down your questions that you have for me in your spiral, and then tomorrow in class we will go over your questions.